You never think it will happen to you. At least I didn't. I always thought we were solid, one of those couples who just fit together. We'd been married for 10 years, built a home, raised a daughter, and shared countless memories. But even the strongest foundations can have cracks hidden beneath the surface, and in my case, those cracks ran deep. It was a Thursday, a completely ordinary day. I was cleaning out the car, rummaging around the back seat, when I found something odd. A receipt for a restaurant I didn't recognize. It was for a dinner for two, dated just 2 days before. The time, 8 p.m., matched the evening when my wife had said she was out with some colleagues for a late meeting. At first, I brushed it off as a harmless thing. Maybe she grabbed dinner with a friend, or perhaps the restaurant issued her the wrong receipt. But my mind wouldn't settle. When you love someone, you're inclined to trust them. But there was something nagging at me, a feeling that something just wasn't right. I kept quiet, though. I watched and waited, hoping the feeling would fade. But over the next few weeks, I noticed small changes. She seemed distracted, always checking her phone, excusing herself from the room to take calls or send messages. When I asked her about her day, she was vague and distant, and whenever I reached for her, she was no longer there, at least not fully. After a month of noticing these small signs, I started to feel like I was going crazy. The doubt had burrowed deep inside me, and I couldn't shake it. So I decided to dig a little further in hopes of finding either confirmation or relief. I checked our phone records and saw a recurring number, one she'd been calling and texting almost every day. I confronted her about it, casually, trying to sound nonchalant. She brushed it off as a work thing, but I could see the flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe? Or fear? That was the moment my trust began to unravel. I didn't know for sure, but I couldn't sit in the dark any longer. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. It was a Saturday afternoon, and she told me she was going to see a friend. The same friend, in fact, that she'd been meeting a lot more often these days. I told her I'd be busy with errands, that she should go and enjoy herself. As soon as she left, I waited a few minutes before following her, keeping a safe distance. She drove across town to a park we hadn't been to in years. I parked my car, blending in with the line of vehicles nearby, and waited. I watched as she got out and strolled to a quiet corner of the park, where a man was waiting for her. I can't describe what it felt like in that moment. My heart pounded, my hands shook, and for a moment I thought I'd faint. There, in plain sight, was the confirmation I'd been dreading. They hugged, and it wasn't the polite hug of friends or colleagues. It was intimate, affectionate. She gazed up at him with a look I hadn't seen in a long time, one of genuine happiness and warmth. I stood there, stunned, frozen by the sight of my wife laughing and smiling in another man's arms. As they settled onto a park bench, oblivious to anyone who might be watching, a fire started to build inside me. My initial shock gave way to anger. No, not just anger. I was furious. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like I'd been made a fool of for weeks, maybe months. Every happy memory we'd shared felt cheapened, like it had been nothing more than a lie. And so I decided then and there that I wouldn't hide in the shadows, wouldn't let them carry on in their deceit without consequence. I wanted her to know that I knew. I wanted everyone around us to know who she was, what she had done. I walked over to them, my footsteps loud and deliberate. I could see her smile fade as she caught sight of me. Her face went pale, and she pulled away from him as if hoping that distance would somehow erase what I'd just seen. The man looked confused, glancing back and forth between us. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, though my entire body was trembling. "So this is what you call a friend?" I said, voice low but loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "This is who you've been meeting when you said you were at work?" She looked away, but I wasn't done. I raised my voice, loud enough to draw attention from other people nearby. "You lied to me," I continued. "You lied to your family, to everyone. Do you even care about what you're doing to us? To our daughter?" Her face turned red, and she tried to stammer out an explanation, but I didn't want to hear it. I was done with her excuses, her lies. I turned to the man beside her, whose face had gone slack with shock. "Did you know she was married? That she had a family? Because if you didn't, you should know now. This is who you're with, a woman who's willing to betray her family for a few stolen hours in a park." The people around us were watching now, murmuring among themselves, but I didn't care. They could watch, they could judge, and maybe some of them would even sympathize. I was beyond caring about appearances. I was angry, hurt, and I wanted her to know the full weight of her betrayal. My wife tried to reach for me, pleading, her voice quivering, but I pulled away. "Don't touch me," I said sharply. "You've made your choice, and now you're going to live with it. Maybe next time you'll think twice before destroying the people who love you." I could see tears in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. In that moment, I only felt disgust. I turned my back on them both and walked away, leaving her with the shame of her actions. As I left the park, I could hear the whispers around me, feel the eyes of strangers on my back, but none of it mattered. My life as I knew it was over, but at least I wasn't living in a lie anymore. Later that evening, she came home, pleading and apologizing, promising me that it was a mistake, that it would never happen again. But I could no longer look at her the same way. The woman I thought I loved, the one I had trusted with every part of myself, had proven herself unworthy of that trust. Her betrayal had changed everything. In the weeks that followed, we tried to talk, to understand where things had gone wrong. But the truth was, the damage was done. I could never erase the image of her with that man, could never forget the way she'd looked at him with the love she once had for me. It's been months now, and while I'm still trying to rebuild my life, the scars remain. I no longer hold anger toward her, but I no longer have love either. The hardest part is explaining things to our daughter, trying to help her understand a situation she's too young to comprehend fully. But I remind myself that I did the right thing by confronting her, by showing her that actions have consequences. In the end, I may have lost a wife, but I found my strength, my resolve, and the knowledge that I deserve honesty, respect, and love in their purest form. And that's the example I intend to set, not just for my daughter, but for anyone who thinks betrayal can be hidden forever. Because the truth once found demands to be faced.